That ought to work. Hi, I am Chris from Airwindows, and here's another of our question and answer live streams. I was going to check on some things before I did this. I didn't have time to do that. I was going to check to see whether my Twitter announcey thing was working. I can probably give that a shot. Let me fool with things for just a little bit. Waiting for people to show up anywho, so it's all good. Let's see now. So where would I even find that? I don't know. There we go. Oh, for heaven's sake, I'm not even going to be able to do it, am I? Right. Hey, Ducraft. Don't mind me, I'm trying to figure out how big of a mess this is. Now let me see if I can look at my own stream and see whether it said anything. Nope, hasn't said shit. Okay. This is apparently now a private show. Or it would be if I didn't do this. Do a little bit of a tweet on behalf of that, and we'll leave it at that. Oh, it's not like we don't have some people showing up, so that's cool. Some days the media stuff is more complicated than others. I'm also going to double check my focusing and stuff. Yeah, that seems about right. So yeah. Hi. We actually have a special thing for these, which is you get to be on screen, even if you're bad. Fancy that. So what I'm going to do is scooch that over. This is, I think, what we're going to deal with today. And that will be the size of the chat. And I have a topic today which I may or may not easily be able to go on at more length about. Maybe I can, yeah, I needed to also bring up Text Wrangler for something else because I have a topic in intensive documentation. And I will manage that intensive documentation by resizing this window so that I can see it as well as you, the chat. And I'll basically be ready for it. So hi. We've got Bo dropped in just to say hello. Hi, Bo. Or goodbye, because I think he left. Total Harmonic Destruction, Snickle, Fritz, Majame, and you know something? Well, I'm getting all of this set up. I might as well fool with it properly. So this should actually be bigger text. This can be, you can't see what I'm doing, but more will become apparent. And this thing is going to be less easy, but that's fine. Andy has super difficult questions, as always. Like I'm going to define Alan Holdsworth's Music 3. I'm not that good. But I have my own points, so there will be at least some things to talk about. Also, how's my level sounding? Because I'm working with the new arrangement of the converter that I've got. I am too fond of the way that it handles clipping without aliasing. So I need to use it for the music stuff that I'm not doing this week. So also using it for the voice stuff, and that means if I go too loud, it sounds distorty, and it should be natural sounding when I do that, or at least no aliasing. And then when I talk softly, it doesn't do that nearly so much. And I think if I hit the right balance on it, there's a sweet spot where it will just sound right. So, cool. And yeah, as far as our chat stuff is concerned, yeah, well, I can learn to project, I think, a little bit. I think if I do that properly, then it'll come out fine. And my last thing is I need to move this so that it covers up face, otherwise I'll just be looking at myself. Here's a great trick for if you are doing Zoom or something like that and you're using some kind of camera or webcam for the camera that you're using, is flip out its little viewfinder thing so that there's a picture of what it's showing on the camera, like right next to the lens. And then shut off the image of yourself on the computer screen, and you will instinctively keep looking at your own image that's being shown, but it'll make it look like you're looking into the camera lens. And I don't have that set up right now, but it's a good trick. So to get back to things, Andy wants to start with saying, "Hey, Chris," and a question about Alan Holdsworth and his way of using scales and chords. Well, the thing about that, if that's the question, you should definitely ask the question. But the chances of me being able to answer demanding music theory questions and Alan Holdsworth stuff is fairly minimal. I mean, that guy's good, and his erudition and expertise is extraordinary. Now, I do know some things about what he does, so it's like if the question is, does he stick to one mode, like your circle, I got this out so that people can see it. Does he stick to like one mode in here? And the answer is pretty much, He does all kinds of much fancier things than that. But yeah, ask the question, I won't necessarily be able to answer it. Schnickel's going, can I talk about Ton? I don't know what you mean. Total harmonic destruction, saying the DAW-wide implementation for oversampling. Well, there's a simple DAW-wide implementation for oversampling, which is run at a way higher sample rate, period. Bottom line. Like, oversampling is run at a higher sample rate. You should not be trying to do little individual oversamplings everywhere. You should just run it at a higher sampling rate. And if you're super into oversampling, you should run it at an insanely higher sampling rate. Just do that. There's everything to gain from doing stuff like that. Yeah, and David and Andy, the Q&A would have changed if last week didn't end up being a complete disaster. I had this elaborate plan that the last week's Q&A was about, over doing everything at 3 o'clock and going for 3 hours instead of 2. It was such a train wreck, I just abandoned it. I did not play in another music jam that week. And basically all that happened is nobody came. And one guy came and was like, wow, it's so bad, it's good. And then everybody left, and it was completely empty. And I was like, who am I to try to set up something like that? Nobody's listening to me. It needs to be somebody that people are listening to who sets up the let's get together and do live streaming so that we can like hand it off to people. Oh, can I talk about the math function tanh? Not off the top of my head, no. I am more into sine and arcsine for the stuff that I'm doing. And getting over to Annan's question, the way Alan Holdsworth uses scales, different from a traditional scale system, yeah. And he is most likely using the traditional mode system, but the thing about it, you got to remember, like within jazz chords, you can play modal. It's fairly easy to stick to this one scale and just blow different changes over that. Where things get interesting is when you've got like Giant Steps by Coltrane is doing the thing where the subchords always go by exactly 1/5, but Giant Steps bounce us around 1/3 of the circle of fifths. Its scales go like boom, boom. Let me see now. Boom, 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 boom. It's this orderly progression, but the tonal centers are all on modes that are literally as far removed from the beginning mode as you can be. Like there are as many sharps and flats changed when it goes to this different center. And then there's as many sharps and flats changed when it goes to this different center. And then it comes back here again. And it's doing that very rapidly. And so it could seem like it's not a traditional modal system, but Coltrane's Giant Steps, and there are lots of other good videos on this as well. So if you want to look that up, go and find YouTube studies on how Giant Steps works. It's using the modal system, but it's intentionally clashing with the idea of keeping everything in one place. And what I did with this stuff is basically working out a way where you can generally produce like 5-chord song by going like boop, 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 boop. Actually, it wouldn't be that because that would be G minor and G. So I think it's the center of the triangle, like going around here in a little cycle. And keeping stuff tightly localized means that it sounds like it's living in the same sort of harmonic center. But something like Giant Steps is intimidating because it's making really big jumps around the circle of fifths. And it's going to a place where the correct notes have lots more sharps and flats than they otherwise would. And then it's going to another place where all of the sharps and flats are now different from what the original ones were, and then back to the center again. It might not be literally starting in this, because this that's outlined in black are the white keys in the piano. So it's technically you could have all the other ones outlined in black, but I wrote it that way so that I could see what I was doing. So yeah, you got to remember that when you're doing advanced jazz modality, you're not sitting in one scale. That's kind of important. And that goes all the way back to Coltrane and very likely way beyond. It's like, classical music doesn't always stick with, anything that's like a key change. If you did a key change that was like, we're in the key of C, all of a sudden, key of D, and it's this big obvious key change. You just added some sharps and flats and things because the entire key just shifted. It wasn't just going to another chord, it's going to another key, so it becomes obvious. And then if you were to go from there to key change, you've just changed 2 sharps instead of just only one, from going only one step over. And then if you did yet another key change and it went up another couple of notes, then that would be even more sharps and flats and things. And that's taking you right over into the zone where the place you ended up is sufficiently different. It's like as different as Giant Steps. It's as different as really difficult jazz. You can't get this version. What I should do is just hold it up for the camera. At some point I will scan it so that people can see it. But I made this up. I don't believe anybody else has this. But there have been things like this out there. I just have been evolving it so that it's a useful thing. I will do a scan of it at some point. I got so many things going on. The point being, playing in stuff like this means you are not constructing a scale to fit all of this different stuff. You're constructing a system where on some bars you're playing in one scale, and then on some bars you're playing this other scale. And in doing that, if you do it really well, it sounds right. And if you keep things fairly tightly localized, like not changing the sharps and flats around too much, within the circle of fifths, it sounds pretty natural. If you make big jumps, then it sounds less natural than that. But that's the idea of it, is even in 4-chord song, which is the most pedestrian sounding thing ever, 4-chord song does not move literally just only in these chords. 4-chord song can also jump a little bit. Actually, that's not quite true, is it? These are contained within the, like if you did G, C, F, D minor, then G, C, and F are contained within this. So yeah, I need to do a scan. All that's written in the text in the sides of the note is Aeolian, Locrian, and I got a dim written in there. That means diminished. Locrian is the mode where there's no fifth. There's only a diminished fifth, so it sounds really weird, and it's just a very cumbersome mode to work with. Ionian is next to the C. Dorian has a 13 written on it, which I think is correct, and that's the special note in the scale. Phrygian, which I have written 7 flat 9, because that's the kind of like crunchy fancy chord that you can play that will give you a bit of a sense of what the Phrygian mode is. Lydian, and I wrote add 11, which I think is what the Lydian mode does in that context. And then G, lastly, Mixolydian, and I wrote a 7. Because if you play a 7th chord, it gives you the idea of what this chord is like in this key. It makes it sound sort of more Mixolydian there. But these are all things that I've just been kind of working on. My point being that the scales that you use, especially if you're trying to make music that's relatively normal rather than just all weird and freaky and stuff, because the weirder and more twisted your harmonic stuff gets, and I suffer from this greatly because I keep trying to do stuff like that and then people run away from my live stream screaming. I've had people be like, I tune in and I have no idea what the hell you're doing. And sometimes if they listen, they wind up getting won over anyway, but that's very rare. So I stop people listening to my music even though I'd rather that they did. So beware harmonic complexity. But when you're doing fancy stuff, you're not playing the same scale all the time. Why does the Dorian have a 13th? Because the Dorian mode is like, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to remember whether it's more minory or majory. I guess it's going to be more minory because in the key of C, that would be a D minor, and that sounds Dorian-like. So it's got a minoriness to it, but there's also a funny extra note in there that is not the same as the regular minor scale. So I added the 13th simply to remind myself that you can include that note and make a chord that sounds like it fits into the mode that you want. Oh, David, I'm always too weird for people. Anyway, this is just sort of the evolution of how I'm trying to develop that stuff. Like, I'm doing it, I can't say that it's necessarily working super well, but yeah, Dorian is more minor. I thought I had that right. But I'm doing the best I can with it. And here's another thing, because seeing as we've gotten onto the theory tip, I have been doing some research into tempo. maybe I should open up Finder and go to my documents and see whether I can find the note that I made for myself. Don't mind me just poking around over here. I can probably just post this. This may or may not work, but if this does work, and I am the channel owner, so if you can type that into Wolfram Alpha, that is a quadratic fit for a sequence of numbers, and those numbers are particular tempos that I felt had a particular quality to them. Those tempos, and it extends a little bit, that or this, and you go to Wolfram Alpha and type that in, and it'll show you a chart. It'll show you a chart that is what's called a least squared plot. It's a polynomial, meaning that it's a equation. And what it says, so I loaded that up so I got it on the screen even while I'm streaming, is 0.959207x squared plus 3.06224x plus 45.1394. These are tempos. These are beats per minute. And I'm making a mathematical formula for something. Because the idea is, I went through music, and I've got my list of music here also, with the purpose of identifying what zones in tempo feel more relaxed, what zones in tempo feel more unstable. And I found an algorithm that gives me tempos that fit categories. Here's my categories. This is what I made. So what I've got here is at the very bottom, you can barely tell because the tempos are too slow, but they're on this equation. We've got a column that is basically stable, that is tempos that feel smooth. We've got a column that feels a little bit more lively, that there's some interest and energy to it, and I'm calling that striving. It's building to a energy level. We've got a column that I'm calling unstable, and by that I mean it feels that things are unsettled and there's more tension in these tempos. And then a column that I'm calling attaining, which is like it's escalating beyond that point to the point where it's getting into that node where things are smooth again. By the way, screenshots if you're trying to grab this. I'll be talking about it extensively. And I went, and firstly, the thing that I showed you on Wolfram Alpha, that is me punching in some of these numbers after having identified songs and things that I felt had this stability that I was repeatedly hearing at different tempos. And coming up with a consistent pattern, because I felt that it was continuing to cycle around. And that when you stick with just tempos of like, well, hang on a second. I don't actually have autofocus turned on this camera, although this one's actually capable of doing it. But what I should do is I'll just, there you go. If I'm looking at the screen, I can do it. Here's your card in focus. Screenshot away. Now, having done that, here's the, because I'm happy to come kind of, the whole point is I'm showing you this, so there's no sense in me showing it in a way that you can't read it. My sense was that this stability is a recurring thing, but it is a thing that it's kind of cyclic, and there was an algorithm, there was a consistency to how stuff worked. And let me shut off the quadratic again. Oop. Go back to this. And so Brian, my idea is, if you do a tap tempo according to the feel that you want to, if it falls into these tempo numbers, it is accomplishing a purpose. And by that I mean, I have examples of all of these things, because this didn't just come out of nowhere. Say, we'll start with, let's start with like more normal tempos. Like, for instance, I'll take requests, by the way. If anybody wants me to start with like 98 relaxed, I can do that. Or I can start with, actually that might be a good idea. I could start with 84 serenity, or I can go back to that. The examples of that are awesome. But, so 98 relaxed. The interesting thing about tempo is that you can do stuff that seems to fit with it. I'll read you the list. 98 beats per minute includes I Want You Back by the Jackson 5, Sweet Home Alabama by Leonard Skinner, Informer by Snow, which is very rapid delivery, but it sounds natural as hell. It's at the relaxed tempo of 98 beats per minute. Brass in Pocket, The Pretenders. It's the most relaxed song imaginable. Concrete Jungle by Bob Marley and the Wailers. I didn't invent these. It's the musicians that recorded these things that invented these. When they really nail a vibe, when they really nail a feel, often it's because they found the right tempo. Tempo is really important. There is a video on Metallica's Black Album where the producer Bob Rock talks about how he taught them how to honor tempo, and they ended up doing things like getting the song Sad But True and getting that to work properly because they put it at the correct tempo rather than some insanely fast thrashy thing. I'll go on. Higher Love, Steve Winwood, 98 beats per minute, relaxed. Hey Soul Sister by Train. It's another relaxed. The Sign, Ace of Base. Midnight Rider by Willie Nelson. Not gonna get no, not gonna. And Crying by Rory Orbison. Life's Been Good by Joe Walsh. My Maserati does 185. You can bop back and forth between these in some ways. My Maserati does 185. Sweet Home Alabama. Brass in Pocket. To the extent that I'm not going to belt out singing for this one. On one of the Minecraft videos I did, but we're not dealing with that right now. My Generation by The Who is an extremely powerful song, but it's at a relaxed tempo. Unless you assume it's double time, but the flow of it is in this relaxed zone. It's in this zone of smoothness. 89 beats per minute. I'm calling that intensifies. But I'll continue, like Relaxed, Take the Money and Run, Steve Miller Band, Dust in the Wind by Kansas, Let's Go Crazy by Prince, Bad to the Bone by George Thorogood, relaxed tempo, Fly Like an Eagle, Steve Miller Band, Ponder Replay, Rihanna, Witchy Woman, The Eagles. These are 98 beats per minute. These are all relaxed vibes, or in some cases like Snow's Informer. If you know that one, it's, a white guy doing reggae type stuff, and he is rapping insanely fast over it. But it sounds natural as anything because the tempo is not any of the unsettling tempos. The tempo is the super relaxed tempo of 98. It's in this column. Want to switch forwards a little bit? Because here's the thing, if you understand how this works, then you know that rather than going from a tempo like 113 to 120, you might be better off going from 113 to 131, keeping the relaxed mode but switching up a gear. What do you get when we do that? We go from relaxed to what I'm calling statement, 113. I'll scroll up a little bit and get that. It's TV themes. Go from relaxed to statement, you get the Gilligan's Island theme, Suicide is Painless from MASH, the 8 is Enough theme. It's a whole bunch of craziness like that, but that's far from the only thing. Wilson Pickett's In the Midnight Hour, Led Zeppelin, Heartbreaker, Should I Stay or Should I Go by The Clash, Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song, Moondance by Led Zeppelin, Soul Man by Sam and Dave, California Dreaming by the Mamas and the Papas, Heroes by David Bowie. This is still fairly chill in tempo, but the Power to the People by John Lennon, or Pump Up the Volume by Mars, Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie, Obla Di Obla Da by the Beatles, 113 beats per minute, Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley. There is a quality to this stuff that just sits right in the center of the tempo and feels absolutely right and normal when you get it in this zone. I'll get onto some of the opposite kinds of things as well. Changes by David Bowie, I Won't Back Down, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Smoke on the Water, Deep Purple, Love is the Message, MFSB. These Magic Carpet Ride, Steppenwolf, 113 beats per minute. I called it statement because so many things seem to be just like, this is me, this is our fundamental song, this is the theme song to the TV show, this is just a canonical something or other, because it's sitting right in the middle of a tempo zone that feels solid as a rock. Let's skip forwards even farther, 131. Again, this is ramping up the tempo pretty aggressively each time. And I'm calling that confident. Dragonstead Dinte by Ozone, Numa Numa Guy, I Kissed a Girl, Katy Perry, Personal Jesus, Depeche Mode, You Can't Do That by the Beatles, Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, Part 1 by James Brown. I'm scanning over these. There's a bunch of stuff from Pink Floyd's Animals. And Moonshadow by Cat Stevens. Let's Go by The Cars, Since You've Been Gone, Kelly Clarkson. Again, this is a very stable tempo. I called the entire category basically stable. No matter what multiplication of this that you get to, Happy Jack, The Who. Moondance by Van Morrison. I think that didn't turn up twice, did it? Let me take a moment and look, actually. 113 to 131. So that's just writing this stuff down, so. Oh, yeah, somebody put it in both. And so I was writing these things down as they came to me, but I wasn't personally measuring them. I'm very curious now as to which one that is. Again, 131, Confident, I'm Gonna Be 500 Miles by The Proclaimers. Girls on Film by Duran Duran. I'm a Boy and I Can See for Miles by The Who. Stable, very solid. So, and as we keep ramping it up, we shift to the next highest gear, 150, which I'm calling weightless. Freebird. Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison. Lola by The Kinks, which does actually change speeds around. She Loves You by the Beatles. This is again a very stable tempo, but I'm calling it weightless because it's cruising along, but it doesn't feel like it's pushing or lagging or anything. It's just floating along. Hollywood Nights, Bob Seger. You May Be Right by Billy Joel. Message in a Bottle by The Police. Good Golly McSmalley, Creedence Clearwater Revival. Making Plans for Nigel, XTC. Crocodile Rock, Elton John. 150 beats per minute. Still in this category. It's way faster now. The Heat Is On, Glenn Frey. You could say Glenn Frey desperately wanted to be a rock and roller, but he was always just kind of too soft rock and stuff, which is very good pop-wise and stuff. And so it stands to reason that he would naturally fall into this category for stuff. And when he's involved with songs, he tends to think of things in this flowing sort of way. Even if he's rocking at 150 beats per minute, he is gravitating to a zone where everything is very stable, very steady. And we can even go ramping beyond that before going to another category. 172 beats per minute. What do we get there? I'll tell you. Mirror in the Bathroom by the English Beat. It's super fast, but it feels like it just floats. Here's another 172 beats per minute, roughly. Girl You Want by Devo. Blitzkrieg Bop by the Ramones. Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin. These don't feel like they're dragging or pushing or striving or struggling or anything. They just flow. That's what this category is all about. And I can go right down to the bottom again. For like 84 Serenity, this is a very slow tempo compared to even the relaxed tempo of 98. And 84 Serenity gets you Silver Springs by Fleetwood Mac, The Joker by the Steve Miller Band, Let's Get It On, Marvin Gaye, Peace Train, Cat Stevens, I Can't Tell You Why by the Eagles, a lot of stuff that Glenn Frey was involved with, like to sit in these tempos. Back in the High Life Again, Steve Winwood, Free Fallin', Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Oh, I can probably tell you. Actually, 206 is fairly high, but it falls into the third category. You want to hear about the third category, this unstable category? Compare that with the stuff I've been telling you about. Because, like, this first category, it's all this stuff from Silver Springs and that really slow stuff to incredibly fast stuff that still just feels completely natural and right. Like 194, Angel of Death, Slayer. Blister in the Sun, Violent Femmes, or at least some people are saying so. Black Parade, My Chemical Romance. When stuff is just, but it just seems to float. It's stable, it's balanced, it's exactly where it should be. That's this category. Painkiller is closer to this category. Let's talk about that a little bit. And other ones I can also talk about, but they're kind of in between the other two. They're either like pushing towards or transcending into this final category. And let's see. So I go all the way back to 90. So, and 140 is what dubstep is at. I call this unstable. I call this the tempo where there's a, like Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley and his Comets is at 90 BPM. I'm calling that huge. I've got 9 Inch Nails, Closer, Fat Bottom Girls by Queen, Raining Blood by Slayer, Roar by Katy Perry, Take the A Train, Duke Ellington, Bat Outta Hell by Meatloaf, Stripped by Depeche Mode, Dear God by XTC, Bow with the Ba by Kid Rock, Bow with the ba, bang the bang, boogie boogie boogie, the up temp the boogie. You're almost like vibrating and trembling as you hit these tempos because it feels unstable. It's not in that stable place anymore. There's a tension in there. There's a pressure behind it. Willie and the Hand Jive by Eric Clapton is the opposite of Kid Rock in terms of seemingly being very chill, but the tempo is pushing really hard. And this is, again, the third category, the unstable category. Turning Japanese by The Vapors is also sitting in there, although that might be more like halftime from it. And what this category does is, I wonder whether I can hold this in such a way where it can consistently be in focus, as I am holding it up. Yeah, so basically I want to hold it back here. That's fine. Now I know. So your 90 is in this category, and it has talked about some of these guys. But then what about this 105, Trample? That's not 120 beats per minute yet. It's a little slower. What do we got here? This is like a slow tempo that is still bombastic and aggressive. And you got things like Master of Puppets by Metallica, Neutron Dance. I know, right? Tape it to my forehead. This is all 105. Here Comes My Girl by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Again, this is the unstable tempo. This is the tempo that just feels like it's exploding and trying to become something else. And there's some really surprising entries in this list. All Star by Smash Mouth, another 105. Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2. Again, these are things where they can be very chill, but there's this tension, there's this, it's as unstable as it gets. It's bursting out in some direction, and you feel the energy of it. It's not sitting in the zone of complete balance and serenity. Instead, it's like, something's happening, oh my God. I Wish by Stevie Wonder, another 105. Pride in the Name of Love by U2. Wheel in the Sky, Journey. Flashlight, Parliament. Hyperactive, Thomas Dolby. White Rabbit, Jefferson Airplane. This is not a fast tempo, but there's a tension to it. Girlfriend in a Coma by the Smiths. Riders on the Storm by the Doors. Fields of Gold by Sting. Everybody's favorite wedding song, at least in terms of numbers and popularity. And yet it is in the treble tempo. It is a slow but unstable tempo with a lot of tension and power behind it. There's a emotion and intensity to it. Even stuff that's very chill, like Listen to the Music by Doobie Brothers. If you imagine that, whoa, listen to the music, you can kind of feel the tempo. But if you notched it down to 98, whoa, listen, it's boring. Sometimes tempo gives you the energy to counteract. Like, Listen to the Music by the Doobie Brothers and Hyperactive by Thomas Dolby are apparently the same tempo, if my sources were to be trusted, which they're not necessarily to be trusted. Cocaine by Eric Clapton, Bop by Hanson. These are 105. It's not a fast tempo again, but it's the demanding category. It's the unstable category. It's the category with a lot of tension behind it. And if you move onwards, we get up to the 122. It's very close to 120 beats per minute. And with this one, we've got Start Me Up by the Rolling Stones, I'm Too Sexy, Right Said Fred, Funky Town, Lip Sync, Revolution, the Beatles, Instant Karma, John Lennon, Have a Cigar, Pink Floyd, All Right Now by Free, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John, Honky Tonk Women by the Rolling Stones, Susudio by Phil Collins, Singing in the Rain by Gene Kelly, Electric Avenue by Eddie Grant, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, their biggest hit, by Aerosmith. I'm calling this one forceful. It's close to 120 beats. It's like a natural heartbeat tempo, but just because 120 beats seems like a natural heartbeat tempo doesn't make it the most stable tempo. If you're trying to do that, you would be pulling back to 113 or forwards to 131 for the stablest sounding tempo. 122, which is close to 120, like halfway between groove and forceful, is the tempo that has something to prove. It pushes good and hard. So like several different, like Us and Them, Wish You Were Here, and Great Gig in the Sky apparently all are at this tempo. Who's Crying Now by Journey, Word Up by Cameo, Rockin' Me by Steve Miller Band, Toxicity by System of a Down, Roadhouse Blues by The Doors, Groove is in the Heart by D-Light. These are all tempos with a lot of unstable energy. Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper, Couldn't Stand the Weather by Stevie Ray Vaughan. And some of these could actually be incorrect. I just wrote down all this stuff, and this is partly how I formulated these concepts. Teacher by Jethro Tull, Drive My Car by the Beatles, Babylon Sisters by Steely Dan, forceful tempos, not Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger by Daft Punk, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, well, Singing in the Rain, think about what that one did. It goes to a dance, yes, but that's a huge monster song. There was a song a while back, one of the stable mellow ones, Ray Conniff, Silver Bells. The original Christmas songs, as they came out, the tempo says something about where they sat. And yeah, Singing in the Rain is this demanding, forceful tempo, because that's a demanding, forceful song and performance. It might be like, get in the rain, but the pace that it's going at, it's not relaxed, but it's not like unstable and freaking out or anything like that. But it is at its most forceful node, although he could have dialed it back to 113 and it would have sat in the statement category, at which point, like, there would be a difference to the way it vibed, I guess. Like, I came up with these words to sort of represent how these things vibe. And that's why you've got, like, 122 forceful, and we've got things like Start Me Up by the Rolling Stones, Word Up by Cameo, Saint-Tropez by Pink Floyd is another one that's sitting in this tempo. And it feels forceful, even though it's very chill. But there's this energy and aggression to these tempos. We'll go further. Somebody was talking about dubstep being 140. I'm calling 140 cranked. And when we get to that one, 140 contains Birthday by the Beatles, Coconut by Harry Nilsson, Lime in the Coconut, Lowrider by War, Lonely Teardrops, Jackie Wilson, Take It Easy by the Eagles, which is a very big song, American Pie by Don McLean, several songs by Yes, like Yours Is No Disgrace, although Yes goes all over tempos. Shattered by the Rolling Stones gives you a really good sense of 140. Cranked. Panama by Van Halen is sitting at the same tempo. You can even switch between shattered, like shattered, shattered, and then into Panama. Don't stand so close to me. Another 140. Ace of Spades is apparently another 140. Pump It Up by Elvis Costello and the Attractions. Rio by Duran Duran. These are cranked. These are not only a fast tempo, but they are as aggressive and unstable as can be. And it shows, although there's some really funny ringers in here. Guess what tempo is also in, song is also in 140? If you like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain, the Pina Colada song by Rupert Holmes is 140. It's the same tempo as Let's Spend the Night Together by the Rolling Stones. And now that you've heard it, you'll never unhear it. So these are cranked. We can go further into haste, which is 161. 161 is starting to get so fast that it's rarer to have songs at this tempo. But you've got like Touch of Grey by the Grateful Dead, Surfin' Safari by the Beach Boys, Head Over Feet by Alanis Morissette, Don't Come Around Here No More. I guess maybe that's for the fast section. I'm a Believer by the Monkees, Ziggy Stardust by David Bowie, I Saw Her Standing There by the Beatles. It's very fast. LaGrange is a beautiful example of 161. It is fast, and it is the most unstable, explosive node of tempo. And you only have to think about, there's also like Dance This Mess Around by the B-52s, Great Balls of Fire by Jerry Lee Lewis. Dance this mess around, to do the 18 dances. It's very fast, and yet it has this instability, and I think it's beautifully exemplified by LaGrange. So if you do this, the
The runs and ride down Texas down by LaGrange.
And 161 is so fast that ZZ Top had trouble with it on the Tres Hombres album, which have done a... Here's another thing. I should mention this as a side note. I'll get back into the tempo talk pretty soon. But as a side note, you know the patron-only Evergreen Records things, which I have done. Tres Hombres, by the way. So there is a Evergreens podcast out there with beautiful vinyl captures of that very song. And I have paid a lot of attention to that. That started out being only for patrons, but there's a thing that happened. Patreon started charging people taxes based on certain locations if people were being supplied stuff that was like digital downloads and private materials. So what I've done is I unpatron-onlyed all of those posts. So now anybody going to the Patreon, if you consider doing that, can see all of that stuff and go to the files and listen to them. So there is no longer any Airwindows stuff that is patron-only and you have to pay to get it. And that suits me. I'm satisfied with that, although the reason I did it was so that people don't get charged taxes. I don't like the idea of people getting charged extra stuff beyond what they thought that they were paying. So I'm doing it on the basis of that and just saying like, nope, nobody has to pay taxes because it is essentially acting like a donation. It's acting like they get nothing. But just a little side note on the topic of LaGrange and Tres Hombres and the Evergreens podcast. So yeah, 160 or 161 LaGrange, it's very fast, but it's also the most unstable tempo compared to 150, which is weightless and feels natural. Where do we go from there? Let's go to 183, which I called flailing. And 183 is even faster, and the only examples I have are Tequila by the Champs, Break On Through to the Other Side by the Doors, and Tell Her About It by Billy Joel. Because these really fast ones, like, they're not as common. So this third category is the modes of tempo, whether they be slow or fast. Let's go all the way back to the slow ones. What does extremely unstable at a super slow tempo feel like? I've got two examples for 78 beats per minute. One is Waiting in Vain by Bob Marley and the Wailers, and the other was Bringing on the Heartbreak by Def Leppard. So those were very slow, chilled out tempos, but they were the most tense of the slow, chilled tempos. And if you were trying to do, you see, here's where it gets interesting. It's knowing this. If you've got like a little chart like this, a little card that you can use, what you can do is go, I want to be around slower than 80 beats per minute. What vibe do I want? And then you can look at that and go, do I want to dial it all the way back to 73, which is going to have one feel? Or do I want to ramp it up to 78? That's like the Waiting in Vain kind of thing. And it's still very slow. But there is a energy and unsettledness to it. And you can pick that out and punch it into the tempo. Now, do you want to go to striving examples or attaining examples? Because what we've got is like at the dance tempos, the one centers around groove and the other one centers around agitation. It's like pushing for the chilled zone and not getting there. And this characterizes through all of these things. Like, you can guess what song is going to have the tempo of swagger. And I bet you're not going to be too far wrong. Or you can guess what's going to have the tempo of groove and not be too far wrong. And if you ramp up groove one notch, you get to ebullient. And that also has songs that are just like, oh yeah, that follows. I get it. So I could just switch straight over to the groove category, which I'm calling striving. And it's just a little bit more energy than the stability, but not so much as things are getting unsettled. Let's start with that. After all, I was just talked about waiting in vain and bringing on the heartbreak. So if we're doing this, then the striving is one thing, but then we can get to intensifies, which is just one step beyond that. It is a little faster than serenity and it's a little slower than huge. What we get out of intensifies is Texas Flood by Stevie Ray Vaughan, Wichita Lineman by Glenn Campbell, Wonderwall by Oasis, Rocky Mountain Way by Joe Walsh, Tom Sawyer by Rush, One of My Turns by Pink Floyd, I'm on Fire by Bruce Springsteen, Time Warp by Rocky Horror Picture Show. Well, actually, I'm not sure if Blitzkrieg Bop quite counts. I think I stuck that in a much higher thing. Allison by Elvis Costello, Livin' La Vida Loca by Ricky Martin, and that's a digital production, so it's very likely to be exactly the tempo. What I Am by Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians. Some of these are ones that I recognize because I grew up with. Monkey Wrench by Foo Fighters. These are, I can probably put the list of songs somewhere, although remember I got this list of songs just off of looking up tempo websites, and so a lot of them could be totally wrong. I know for a fact, having just talked about it, that Moondance by Van Morrison is in two of these categories, and it can't be both. It's got to be one or the other. So the list of songs is not necessarily that useful. Like if you really cared about a song, what you should do is measure it, because it could be super duper wrong here. This is internet research right here. But this main piece of paper, same deal as this. I need to start making scans of these at some point. I'll get along to it. I have plugins and stuff to put out as well. Here's another example for intensifies, the 88 beats per minute, halfway between unstable and stable, or pushing a little more energy out of the serenity, is, see, what was I looking at? Oh, Umbrella by Rihanna. Rihanna's first big song is one of these striving songs. Let's see. Boys of Summer by Don Henley. It's kind of chill, but it's got a little more energy than that. But it's not unstable. It's not unsettled. It's settled, but it's livening things up a little bit. And that's what this category is like. The 102 is, actually no, the 88 is intensifies. It's chill, but it intensifies. There's a little more going on there. Let's skip ahead. 102, not 88, 102 is testify. What would that mean? What kinds of songs might we have here? You might be surprised. 102 is still fairly slow, but I wonder if I can hold this up here and then you can actually see it. I'm probably killing my microphone, or at least suppressing it. Paradise City by Guns N' Roses is 102 BPM. Superstition by Stevie Wonder. 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover by Paul Simon. Thank God I'm a Country Boy by John Denver. What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. These are 102. I'm calling it Testify. Piano Man by Billy Joel. Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper. Star Wars main theme by John Williams. Hey Ladies by Beastie Boys. I Took a Pill in Ibiza by Mike Posner. Wild Thing by The Trogs. Farther Finger by George Michael. Fly Robin Fly by Silver Convention. Insane in the Brain by Cypress Hill. Dance All Days by Wang Chung. It's the End of the World as We Know It by R.E.M. Salisbury Hill by Peter Gabriel. River Deep Mountain High, Tina Turner. Champagne Supernova by Oasis. These are songs that are just making the case for what the musician or band are about. Safety Dance by Men Without Hats, BYOB by System of a Down, The Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. I think that's the whole list. 102 BPM. Testify. It's got a lot of stability to it, but it's just waking up. It's got something to prove, this tempo. So it's not a fast tempo. 102 is not a fast tempo, and it's not unstable. 105 is the unstable one. But Testify is what I'm calling this, because all of these tracks sat at this tempo because they were just laying down the law in some kind of way. And it stands to reason Oasis would be in here with Champagne Supernova, because it's like, yup. But System of a Down making the same kinds of points in their own way. BYOB, the most powerful messages that they had to deliver. Star Wars main theme. John Williams, the Star Wars theme. Islands in the Stream by Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. Islands in the Stream by Kenny Rogers and Hey Ladies by Beastie Boys are the same tempo. So this Testify tempo is like, bam. All of these tracks had in common, and this is not to say that other tempos can't testify, but the ones that sat here really laid it down in a particular way. That the songs, because what happens, I think, is you got the song, and the song sits with the correct tempo and delivers the correct feel in this concept that I've worked out, where it's like, okay, these are stable and smooth, and they sit naturally in this tempo. These are unstable, and there's a lot of energy and tension in this. And this is as they start to bloom and build up the energy and so on. So when you're slow, but you're blooming the energy in a way that's emphatic without going a little bonkers, that's where Testify sits. And I just gave you the list. What do you think might sit in groove? 118 beats per minute. Any guesses? You look up those tempos and I can cross-reference them with this list. Even if I can't double-check the tempos of it, I can cross-reference them with this. First song in the groove category, Billie Jean, Michael Jackson, of course. Axel F., Harold Faltermeyer. Lady Marmalade, La Bella, Smells Like Teen Spirit, Nirvana, 3 AM Eternal, the KLF. If you're familiar with the KLF, which some of this stuff I think is just old people music, but especially things like Singing in the Rain. But I tried to pull in other stuff there as well. Dancing Days by Led Zeppelin. Every Breath You Take by The Police sits in the groove category. Once in a Lifetime, Talking Heads. Saved by Zero, The Fix. Don't You Watch Me, The Human League. Evil Ways, Santana. You got to change your evil ways, baby. It's just a hair below 120. And there's a swing to it. We Are Family by Sister Sledge. We are family. Love Reign Over Me by The Who. Glory Days by Bruce Springsteen. Glory Days. They'll pass you by, glory days. The Final Countdown by Europe. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Born on the Bayou by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Born on the Bayou, born on the Bayou. These ones have a compelling quality to them, because the relaxedness is not really the primary thing. They start to bloom into their energy, but without the point of getting unsettling. Here's another one, Happy Together by the Turtles, 1999 by Prince, Man on the Moon by R.E.M. Did you believe they put a man on the moon? I don't know if I'm really snapping at the right tempo, but some of these songs just give you the tempo. They feel like that. Thriller by Michael Jackson. Thriller Night. Graceland by Paul Simon. Keep looking around. Saved by Zero by The Fix. The Siskel and Ebert theme, apparently. Inagata Vida by Iron Butterfly, at least part of it. Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow by Fleetwood Mac. Give Me Shelter by the Rolling Stones. Get some shelter. I'm gonna fade. The power of some of this stuff, but it's not bombastic like either the slower and unstable ones or the completely chilled and smoothed out ones. Night Moves by Bob Seger, when it starts actually strumming and going. Billie Jean, 118. It's the first one that I listed. That Smell by Lynyrd Skynyrd is also 118. So groove songs, the reason I put groove is that this is close to your ideal dance music tempo. It's chill, but it has enough energy in it to be extremely propulsive, which also suggests that you can modulate that to direct mood. And by that I mean you could do something at 118, and then if you had a big bombastic chorus where there was stuff that you really needed to say, you could dial it back. You could pull it back all the way to 113 if you really wanted to. Or if you went into a bridge or you went into some final outro and wanted to really start slamming it out so that you're like, oh my God, they're exploding, they're attacking me, you'd go to 122 and it would become forceful. From 118, which is groove. And in doing this, you're modulating sort of the energy mood as well as the raw tempo, and small changes would probably have big effects here. Like if you're chugging along on groove, but you wanted stuff to be a little bit more like, I stand here making this statement, you could go to 116. 117, 114. If you go to 113, you're already down to statement. Or if you wanted to emphasize the groove a little bit more, you go to 119 or 120, and you're halfway between that and forceful. You go all the way to 122, it's dominating the amount of energy that's putting out is drawing attention to itself. 122 is like pound, 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 pound. 118, pulling back a little bit, it's naturally flowing, but there's a bunch of energy bursting out. Again, Billie Jean, Every Breath You Take, Evil Ways, Glory Days, Secondhand News by Fleetwood Mac, We Are Family by Sister Sledge, The Final Countdown by Europe. So what I would remind you to do about using this tempo card, if you screenshotted it, I'll make it possible to screenshot again, is if you're selecting a tempo, start looking around in the realm of the tempo that you're looking at and seeing whether there is an adjective written here that seems like it's what you'd want to do. With the basic categories being stable, essentially unstable, and striving or attaining. I'm talking about the striving category now. I'll keep going because we've only gotten to 122. It gets even, or 118. It gets even better. Like ebullient. Imagine what ebullient would mean musically. It goes from confident. And remember, confident 131, that's where we get like Personal Jesus by Depeche Mode, or You Can't Do That, Song 2 by Blur, Test for Echo by Rush, Papa's Got a Brand New Bag. Confident 131 also has Limelight by Rush, Invisible Touch, Super Freak, Let's Go by the Cars, Gloria by Van Morrison. There's a lot of stuff there. Video Killed the Radio Star is at that confident tempo. It just nails it. It feels exactly right. There's a lot in there. Gangnam Style is apparently 131. Still Crazy After All These Years is 131. It's a faster tempo, but it's stable as a rock. When you get a little bit more than stable, you get to 136, ebullient. What do we get there? I'll tell you. Green Onions by Booker T and the MGs. Uncle John's Band is a beautiful example here. You can, if you've heard that song off of Working Man's Dead, come Hear Uncle John's band bang to the tide. It's bubbly. Stuff is going on there. Spirit of Radio by Rush sits at 136 some of the time. Go Your Own Way by Fleetwood Mac sits at 136 some of your time. Apparently the Chariots of Fire theme by Vangelis sits at 136. Let me see. Let me figure out how I can hold you. David wants to screenshot again, so let's do another screenshot opportunity. And it needs to be here. So yeah, Rome by the B-52s, 136 BPM. Big Mouth Strikes Again by the Smiths. Little Do Scoop by the Beach Boys. Reeling in the Year, Steely Dan. Roxanne by the Police, 136. The ebullient thing. Here's a crazy one. You wouldn't believe that this was a tempo called ebullient, but if you think about what else it could be. Welcome to the Machine by Pink Floyd is at the 136 tempo. It's ebullient. And if you think about it, like, welcome, my son. Welcome. Imagine what that would be like if it was much slower. Welcome, my son. You'd turn it right off. It would be boring. That song, Welcome to the Machine, works because it's a really grim, lyrically, it's a really grim song. Musically, the sounds of it are grueling and downbeat and repetitive and like the tempo is giving it a kind of energy that's propulsive, and it counteracts how dreary the rest of the song is, because if Welcome to the Machine is anything, it's dreary. But you've got this bouncy little ebullient tempo. Here, one that's more typically ebullient is It's Raining Men by the Weather Girls, or Sandstorm by Darude. Really apparently is 136. There Is a Light That Never Goes Up by the Smiths. Rocket Man by Elton John. Santa Claus Is Coming to Town by Bruce Springsteen. Most of the Underture to Tommy by The Who. I'm the Scatman by Scatman John. These are ebullient songs at the ebullient tempo. It's a little more than just stability, but it's not like pushing to be unstable and unsettling. These are the groove tempos. So this groove stuff, like Dreamweaver by Gary Wright, Ben by Michael Jackson, would be really dreary if it wasn't at a fast up-tempo grooving kind of sense. These are all very animated. Like I'm calling it ebullient because it's the best way that I can describe for stuff like Point of No Return, Kansas, come on, to the point of no return. Rock and Roll Band by Boston. All Day and All of the Night by the Kinks. It's just a nifty tempo. However, we can go... So, Brian, if you feel your tempo should be in the 70s, then think about whether you would like the end result to feel stable or unstable or striving, because the point is it matters. Like, you don't just randomly pick these. This category feels a certain way, this category feels a certain way, this category feels a certain way, and whatever subtempo it is, whether it be 75, 88, 102, 118, 136, 155, there's a sort of common thread to those. To which point, let's skip ahead. Let's go to the, go from 150, weightless, like Freebird or whatever, to a more up-tempo thing that is more like sparkling. And that's what I called this, was sparkling. Crazy Little Thing Called Love by Queen. Girl Gone Bad by Van Halen. Veronica by Elvis Costello. All My Loving by the Beatles. Sugar Magnolia by the Grateful Dead. That's a sparkling tempo. And that band did a lot of great things with that. Drift Away by Dobie Gray. Give me the beat, boy, to free my soul. I want to get lost in a rock and roll and drift away. Free Will by Rush apparently sits in that fair bit. If you count Halftime, Massive Attack's Teardrop, the theme to House, sits about this tempo. That's one of the things that can happen, is that if you've got a halftime tempo, it'll seem very slow, but you can pick one of these tempos where something is going on with it. And what would appear to be a very slow down tempo thing actually has a sense of some other mood to it. Free Will by Rush apparently sits at 155. My Hero by the Foo Fighters. Take the Long Way Home by Supertramp. Lay Lady Lay by Bob Dylan. All the Young Dudes by Mott the Hoople. Dream On by Aerosmith. Fire by Jimi Hendrix. 155 is a neat tempo. This is still in the groove zone. This isn't the zone. If you think about Free Will by Rush, if there's Rush fans here and stuff, you think about the way that that sort of moves and swings. And it's one of those, like, caring greatly about the concepts and stuff, but the energy in that one, it's sitting at 155 beats per minute, and it's in this grooving category. So it's sparkling. It's like it's starting to burst out beyond just the perfect stability of this first category, but without going to the point where it's just like thrashing all over the place and freaking out. Third category, unstable, is good for thrashing all over the place and freaking out at whatever speed. But this is the one where it's like some energy is building into this stuff, but it still feels relaxed in a sense. 177 beats per minute. That's silly fast. But that is also this chilled grooving tempo. So at 177, you apparently have The Boys of Summer by Don Henley. I Want to Be a Hippie by Technohead, and Euphoria did a version of that I loved. And I'm Still Standing by Elton John. Still standing, I ever did. There's a groove to it even though it's crazy fast. It doesn't feel as if it's going out of control, even though it's crazy fast. And I called that silly fast. The step above that for energy is flailing. So if you're doing a song, it's at a super high tempo, it feels like it's flailing, and you need to dial it back a hair, you can dial it back to 177, the I Want to Be a Hippie tempo, or all the way back to 172, so that it's dizzying but feels completely stable. And that's 172 to 183. It's just over 10 beats per minute, but it means everything in terms of the general feel of how it feels like to go that fast. Like you can be flying or you can be re-entering from space and burning up. These are all tempo issues, but it's not just a matter of faster is more energy or something. It's the style of energy. And T.H. Wath is asking, we're talking about bands that didn't, well, a lot of these examples are bands that didn't play to the grid, but I think that the tempo categories fit even when you're generating stuff on the grid. And that's what makes it interesting to me, because I want to be doing my own electronic music and setting like the tempos of my synthesizers and stuff to appropriate settings. Like if I hear something happening and I'm like, I want to make this feel more grooving, or I want to make this feel more bursting with energy or something like that, I should be able to move the tempo among these in such a way that I can get something going on. Or if I'm already in some zone and I want to shift it up a gear, I should be able to move up and down these columns. Go like, okay, we'll switch from 98 to 131. Seemingly it's a big change in tempo, but it's not a change in vibe. It feels like, oh, we went from something that was very much within the section of, very much within grooving to another thing that has about the same energy level, even if it's a faster tempo, I think that would work. That's, I think, the neat thing about discovering this. And having gone to 177, let's talk about that last category. The last category is the one that contains Walk This Way by Aerosmith, Sex Machine by James Brown, Boogie on Reggae Woman by Stevie Wonder. The last category is the one that contains swagger. It contains Play That Funky Music by Wild Cherry. It contains a lot of crazy stuff. But we'll start with 81, which is slow tempo swagger. Get Up, Stand Up by Bob Marley and the Wailers, not the Waities. Bob Marley and the Wailers did Get Up, Stand Up at 81 BPM rather than like 75 or 73 or even 84. Like Get Up, Stand Up feels different from if they did it at the Joker tempo or the Silver Springs from Fleetwood Mac tempo. I think I mentioned all of those ones. Like another 84 tempo is Free Fallin' by Tom Petty, Back in the High Life, Clint Eastwood by Gorillaz, Join Together with the Band by The Who, Peace Train, I Can't Tell You Why by the Eagles, To Be With You, Mr. Big feels very strong and powerful. And these are the Serenity tempos, but Get Up, Stand Up is not that. It's slowed down a little bit so that it has a little more emphasis. It's not slowed down so much that it's unstable. It's not slowed down so that it's tense. It's just slowed down enough that you kind of feel the emphasis of it. No Woman, No Cry by Bob Marley and the Wailers is also a 81 tempo. What I've got here for 94 is Excessive. Let's see what counts for that. Now, one thing to talk about with this Excessive is that's not necessarily bad. One song in this example, Ahmet Ertegun used to challenge people that came with like, oh my God, I have a song here. It's amazing. You should put this record out. It's going to be incredible and stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, you think you have a signal? Listen to this. And he would play a guy's song, and the song that he played would just have people going, okay, I'll go away now. What I'm doing is not that amazing. That's what I mean by excessive, is just the stuff that's like, oh my God. It's 94 BPM, and Back in Black is not the only entry in this category. The one that I was talking about that Ahmet Ertegun was playing to people was In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins. That's what he would play to be like, oh yeah, you think you've got a single? Okay, listen to this and then tell me if you still think you have the most amazing single. And he'd play In the Air Tonight and people would be like, ugh. Because the excessiveness of 94 BPM is like right up to the point of the smoothness of the natural tempos. But there is this swagger, this intensity of slowing it up just a bit from that. And you got stuff like Baby One More Time, Britney Spears is another 94. Love in an Elevator is at the same tempo at Back in Black, which is another 94. Blowin' in the Wind by Bob Dylan, All That She Wants, Ace of Base. Strangers in the Night by Frank Sinatra. ABC by the Jackson 5. Country Roads by John Denver. Cheap Sunglasses by ZZ Top. The Lumberjack Song from Monty Python's Flying Circus. I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. There's a lot to be said for this excessive tempo. It is a little more emphatic than just your ultimate relaxed tempo. It's like, it's a little bit more like, you also get like Freeze Frame by Jay Giles, Follow You, Follow Me by Genesis. There's a lot in here where people choosing this tempo seem to be able to, tempted by Squeeze, American Woman by the Guess Who, Over the Rainbow by Judy Garland. These excessive tempos at 94 seem to be very useful for when people want to just, nail it to the ground, just dominate, just completely make something, just stomps everything else completely. 94 seems to be a good tempo for that because it's on the verge of relaxed, very natural flowing relaxed, but it's just like, no, we're going to hold back a little bit and tromp. All I Really Want by Alanis Morissette. There's a lot of massive debut songs at this tempo. A lot of huge, huge, huge songs. I mean, any category where you got In the Air Tonight, Back in Black, Cheap Sunglasses, the Lumberjack Song, Country Roads, Over the Rainbow, Tempted, Stranger Than the Night by Frank Sinatra. There's just a lot going on there. Wake Up Little Susie by the Everly Brothers. There's this emphaticness to it. But then we can accelerate a little bit to 109. And 109 is swagger. So, of course, the first thing that you would expect is Walk This Way. And Walk This Way belongs in 190. There's a lot of stuff in the swagger tempo, including stuff you wouldn't necessarily guess, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer by Bing Crosby. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is at the same tempo as Bangarang by Skrillex, and Jolene by Dolly Parton. This is a thing where it's not just a statement, it's like holding back a little bit just in order to make the point. Eye of the Tiger by Survivor, More Than a Feeling by Boston, 109 beats per minute. Golden Years by David Bowie. Golden Years. Walk This Way. Larger Than Life by the Backstreet Boys. A bunch of other good debut albums out of this. Hold Me Now by Thompson Twins. Boogie On Reggae Woman by Stevie Wonder. How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You. Ballroom Blitz by The Sweet. A Spoonful of Sugar by Julie Andrews is the same tempo as Walk This Way. A spoonful of sugar melts the medicine go down. Life in the Fast Lane. Spoonful of sugar helps the cocaine go down. Moving on. Another One Bites the Dust. Swagger, 109 beats per minute. Hush, Deep Purple. Walking on Sunshine, Katrina and the Waves, a swagger tempo. Play That Funky Music. Did that show up twice? I can't remember whether it showed up twice. But the basic idea, and let me see, 105. What I've got for 105 is Trample. So Trample is next to swagger. 109 is swagger, 105 is trample. So the idea of You Ought to Know is like, you ought to know. That, you could speed it up. You ought to know. But it feels to me more like trample than swagger. And if you think about it, it's like, yeah, that fits. I know the song. That fits. So we've got a lot of swagger songs. Toccata by Emerson, Lake and Palmer off of the Brain Salad Surgery albums. Apparently sits at 109 a lot. Very swaggering. I think I mentioned Eye of the Tiger. Need You Tonight by NXS or All Night Long by Lionel Richie. They don't necessarily have to be rock songs so much as just the vibe of it is just beyond confident. It's not as fast as Statement, which is one step up from that, not as fast as Groove. But, like Signed, Sealed, Delivered by Stevie Wonder is another 109. Can You Feel the Love Tonight by Elton John is another swagger song, which kind of fits, Boots are made for walking. Somebody look it up, post it, I'll tell you what it is. So swagger is very interesting in its own right. Then we have got agitated. We're moving beyond a little bit. We're moving between the 120 beats per minute of like dance groove type stuff, but we're not quite into that 130 beats per minute of ebullient, confident, all of that kind of stuff. So what I called 126 was agitated. And I have a surprising and big list on that. 166, effortless. That's we're getting to that. This is in this very category. So maybe that was, you're thinking of stuff that fits with these different songs. You came up with another thing in this exact category we're talking about. Effortless is in the swagger category. It's right here. So the theory checks out, apparently. At least for that song. So 126 beats per minute. It's beyond forceful. It's not quite too confident. So it's a little bit slower than the confident, smooth flow. Like it's a little bit slower than your, I'm trying to look at good examples here. I Want to Hold Your Hand or Happy Jack or whatever. You slow down a little bit from that zone of like, oh yeah, we're really cranking, to agitated. And you get stuff like Daydream Believer by the Monkees, or Right Round by Florida, or Owner of a Lonely Heart by Yes. Shiny Happy People is at 126. Sweet Child of Mine is Guns N' Roses. That's another 126. Pink Floyd is a bunch in this. Money and Time off of the Dark Side of the Moon album. Levels by Avicii. Sweet Dreams by Eurythmics is another 126. Under My Thumb. When Doves Cry by Prince. Remember a Day by Pink Floyd. If massive Pink Floyd fans might have an easier time thinking of that one. Sarah by Fleetwood Mac is a somewhat late period Fleetwood Mac song, but there is this agitated energy to it and it fits with the topic. Whatever Gets You Through the Night by John Lennon. After Midnight by Eric Clapton. The Guts of Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd sits in that agitated zone. Hello, is there anybody in there? Is sitting at the same agitated tempo. It's a little too much. It's not quite to the zone of feeling confident again, so there's something unsettling about it. Rock You Like a Hurricane is 126. YMCA by the Village People is 126. Losing My Religion by R.E.M. Margaritaville by Jimmy Buffett. Locomotive Breath by Jethro Tull. In a Big Country by Big Country. I Don't Like Mondays by the Boomtown Rats. Higher Ground. What Is Love, Baby Don't Hurt Me No More by Hathaway. 126. This stuff is bursting out with energy. And again, it's one of those things where you have a tempo that does a particular thing, and you can set the like Jump Around by House of Pain, 126. You can set the tempo to be like Locomotive Breath. I'm going to make a song, Jethro Tull is going to make a song about, oh, the train's going so fast and it won't slow down. Just pounding it out, just bursting with energy and just on the verge of being unstable and freaking out. Or you can kind of do the opposite, like Jump Around by House of Pain is a party song. It's a party rock song. Pride and Joy by Stevie Ray Vaughan is celebratory, but it's at 126. House of Fun by Madness is more bonkers, unsettled, out of control. When Doves Cry by Prince is very much like, what is the most agitated tempo that I could use for this? What is the most unsettling thing that I can do? Whatever Gets You Through the Night by John Lennon is transcending the agitated feeling. It's like, okay, we're doing the agitated tempo, but the idea of it is like, yeah, we're going to get through. It's all right. It's all right. And, there's a whole range of emotions that you can blend with these things. You got something going on like Margaritaville by Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy Buffett, you'd think of as a very slow tempo guy, if you think about it. You're like, yep, that's a beach bum drunk guy who's not doing anything. But Margaritaville is at 126. There's a wide variety of stuff going on there. Yeah. Look up Elvis songs, and I'll tell you. This is definitely, it's 12:37, so I'm going to need to wind to a close. I'm getting to the end of my list. But I did Agitated. The next one is 145. Now, we did 140, which is Cranked. 140, Cranked, is like Take It Easy, or Birthday, or Lime in a Coconut, Lowrider, Don't Stand So Close to Me, Rio, Ace of Spades. It's stuff that, Well, Levitating is 145. It's getting to the point of weightlessness of 150, because 150 is really fast, and that's like your Free Bird, Sailing by Christopher Cross, Pass the Duchy by Musical Youth, that's another 150. So dropping back a bit is what I called levitating. And you got stuff like Up on Cripple Creek by the band, or The Weight by the band, sits at the same tempo. We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel is another one like that. The Sound of the Crowd by the Human League. Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf. I Ran So Far Away by Flock of Seagulls. Walking on the Moon by The Police. If Pink Floyd fans might remember the feel of Fearless off of the Metal album. And that is another 145 beats per minute one. It's not playing the fast notes, but it's sitting at 145. Domo Arigato, Mr. Roboto is 145. It's not quite so fast that it's like, oh yeah, this is really levitating and spinning frictionlessly, but it's fast enough that it's starting to take off. Another one that feels like 145, it feels really fast, is Illegal Alien by Genesis. And the vocal performance by Phil Collins is intense because it's really energetic and explosive and stuff, but it's not purely struggle. It starts to transcend in a way. Wild Horses, apparently, by the Rolling Stones is also 145. I Can't Stand Losing You is also by the Police. And Cool for Cats by Squeeze. Pretty Vacant by the Sex Pistols. These are all 145 BPM, the tempo that I'm calling levitating. Come On Feel the Noise by Quiet Riot, which Quiet Riot apparently hated. And we're getting to that. You're bringing up a song that's at the next step along. You're bringing up a song that's in the same category. Here It Goes Again by OK Go. Another levitating, another 145. It's really fast, but it's getting to that zone where it's feeling weightless. Tainted Love by Softail. Dun, 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 dun. Getting up to that point, but there's just a little more power to it. And then let's switch over to 166. I think it might even show up there. Nope, I've only got 3 examples. What I've got for 166 I'm calling Effortless. And my examples are Get Over It by the Eagles and Rock and Roll Music by Chuck Berry, and strangely, You Can Still Rock in America by Night Ranger. If Wheel Will Rock You was really 166, that's cool, because that would fit. Yeah, blood on your face, big disgrace.
all over the place, singing.
That is the swagger tempo at a higher subdivision. That boom boom at 166 BPM is basically the same thing as Walk This Way at 109. Like, and these boots are made for walking. Yeah. So again, still in the same swagger zone. The ones in this category are the ones with attitude up the wazoo. Loads of attitude. It's a little slower than naturalness, sort of, just to make the point. And then I'll skip ahead to 189. I got a couple of examples here. 189 I called luminous. I consider that to be, Number of the Beast was, I think, either the statement, let me look it up. I have it in here. It was one of my examples, and it was one of the funnier examples, because it's like, how'd this fit in here? Maybe it was slower. I'll do a little quick search and I'll find it that way. Yeah. Number of the Beast is not, you're going to love this, it is not 166. It is 102. It is the Testify tempo. I guess testify means different things to different people. But if you think about what the band was doing with that song and how big of a deal it was for them, it fits. So it is in that groove zone. It is in the groove category. And we are talking about the swagger category and finding example after example. And I had gotten to 189, the second to last thing on my list, which I called luminous. And 189 contains Magic Bus by The Who, Powerhouse by Raymond Scott, the classic Warner Brothers singer. Long Tall Sally by Little Richard, and Tutti Frutti by Little Richard. Little Richard liked this tempo. It is the fastest swagger tempo you're likely to be able to find. So if you think about Magic Bus or whatever, that is the fastest swaggering tempo, and 189 is your tempo for that. It is your tempo for just really flipping out at a high tempo, but retaining the swagger of being in control rather than seeming like you're flailing around. If you dropped Magic Bus or Long Tall Sally, back from 189 of luminous to flailing, it turns into Tell Her About It, Billy Joel, or Break On Through by The Doors, which, if you think about those ones, it's like, yep, those songs definitely feel a little bit more flaily, a little bit more like, blah, it's too much, it's going out of control. So if you've got something at the super fast tempo and you want to make it feel like it's going a little too out of control, you slow it down. You go from 189 down to 183, moving it from the swagger category into the unstable category. And then if you wanted, and we're leading to this, I'm not sure if it would literally, actually, I can tell you. Yeah. 220, you say. The last one I've got on my card I called 194, Transcendent Stillness of Top Speed. It's not the last tempo, but if you move from this 189 to 194, you're going to get the fast parts of The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. You'll get Blister in the Sun by Violent Femmes, Angel of Death, Slayer, Guns of Brixton, The Clash, Whipping Post by the Allman Brothers Band. So Blister in the Sun does not sound more flailing and out of control then like tell her about it or break on through to the other side. It's faster, and it's gotten into this category, like you might say, doesn't sound at all frenetic. No, this category sounds frenetic. This category does not sound frenetic. And Blister in the Sun doesn't sound frenetic. It's like dun, 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 dun. And you mentioned 220. Well, if you continue, that mathematical formula goes beyond there. I just don't have song examples for all of them. So we got to the transcendent stillness of top speed, which isn't really top speed, 194. And that gets you like the fast bits of Black Parade, Blister in the Sun, and so on. But if you go beyond that, 201, 207, 213, then you get back to the smooth part, 220. 220 is in this column. If you had your classic jazz tune and it was at 233, I don't think it would sound nearly as unfrenetic. 220 is in this column. 220 is more likely to sound not frenetic because it swings hard, but this is the zone of complete stability. So you mentioned 220. It's not on my list, but I wrote down 194. 220 is the next in this category. And beyond that, I don't know. Like beyond that, it's like 194, 201, 207, 213, 220, and then 226, 233, 240. I gave you the mathematical thing in that post way earlier for Wolfram. But yeah, you can choose a unstable and flailing tempo that's super fast. Pick 233. The mathematic thing goes. Oh, if you want to seem rushing, then do this. If you want to seem dragging, do this. Or close to this, but then a little. Swagger is like dragging. And rushing, actually it's more like rushing would be groove. And everything seems to have a little more energy. Maybe rushing would be all the way to the unstable. And then dragging is coming from this direction towards unstable. So unstable feels like rushing and dragging at the same time. And that's basically it. So I'm going on extra long, but this is what I wanted to talk about because this is the work that I've done, and I will make it possible to download this information. And in fact, I can also run the algorithm and get even higher numbers. Like if you wanted to start it out, like I went lower than 73. The lowest ones I had were 45, 45.6, 46, 48. It becomes meaningless at that point because like down at that tempo you can't hear beats anyway. 49, 50.4, 51, 53, 55, 57, 58, 61, 62. So 62 is another stable thing. 65, 67 is another unsettled tempo. 70. Then we get into your 73, 75, and we get into this actual card. Well, you're going to want to listen. You're going to want to watch this one on replay because I can't stay any longer. But man, we're talking about tempo pretty much this entire time, and I discovered an algorithm. I discovered an algorithm for what kinds of tempos feel stable and what kinds of tempos feel unstable. And then there's also a zone of groovingness and there's a zone of swagger. And you can get those zones working at every tempo that you could possibly want. You can pick one of those flavors and it delivers. So that's all good fun. So having said that, I am going to, I think, pop chat back. and bid you guys good evening or good afternoon or whatever the heck it is we're doing. As far as my plans for the next week, I'm expecting I'm not going to be doing any music streaming this week because I'm rebuilding stuff. Like, based on things like doing the research on this and figuring out what I'm doing. My goal is to be able to do my music jam type things and have people actually wanting to listen to them and stay to listen to them. So I got work to do. But I feel like when I get that back in action, I can take a couple of levels in Amazing, and maybe that'll be cool. I know that the most recent one that I did, although it was challenging because I was trying to do it for 3 hours and set up a whole schedule on things, which didn't stick. I did do something, like the reason I have my vocal mic going into the converter with the transformer setting that some people have complained about, because if I yell loudly, it sounds distorty, because that's what it's doing, is a digital model of distortion. But it's an extremely clean one because it's built into the Lavry, and it is aliasing free because it's at the Delta Sigma stage rather than at the decimated digital audio stage. And I liked what that did to the music so much, even though the music wasn't coming out note-wise the way that I wanted, that I decided I was going to keep it. So now, like, I've got that set up. I've got the compressor that used to be on my mix bus on my reverbs, so that's bringing the compression, that's bringing the reverb up some, so ambient music should become more interesting. And I'll just be working on that stuff. When it comes back, I'll have more to offer there, and I'll be learning more things. But the process of doing that is what gives me stuff like these things that I keep developing. And that's basically what I do. I'm very happy that I get to do that, like, for a job. It's a weird job, but I needed this kind of information and nobody had it. Nobody has come out with a thing that divides tempos into 4 categories of vibe. I guess that one was left to me because I thought that it was possible and I had an algorithm and a plan, and it seems to have worked. On that note, I will talk to you folks later. Bye-bye.